Have you ever wondered why all the drivers are talking about Max Verstappen, even without having been the fastest at the Nürburgring? Because what he did on his first day has nothing to do with setting the best time, but with something much more dangerous, getting into one of the most extreme circuits in the world with a completely different car, surrounded by traffic with no margin for error, and still competing as if he had been there for years. But here comes the really shocking thing. It is not a simple experiment, it is not an exhibition, and it is not a champion's whim. It is the beginning of something much bigger that could completely change Verstappen's future outside of Formula One. What we are seeing with Max Verstappen at the Nürburgring is not a simple one-off appearance or an isolated experiment. It is the beginning of a movement much more calculated than it seems. Because while many thought that this was a curiosity within his career, the reality is that we are facing his first competitive participation of 2026 on the Nordschleife, in an official test, demanding and completely removed from the controlled environment of Formula One. And this is where the interesting thing begins. Verstappen does not arrive on this stage as a superstar who simply wants to try something different. He arrives with a serious, structured program and with a very clear objective. He is competing in the NLS2, a 4-hour race that serves as a direct simulation for the Nürburgring 24 hours. That is to say, each lap he takes is not improvised. Each decision is part of a much larger preparation that points to one of the toughest tests in world motorsport. But what really changes everything is the context in which this debut occurs. Verstappen goes from a Formula One car, where everything revolves around millimeter precision and performance in clean air, to a GT3 car where chaos is constant. Traffic everywhere, huge differences in pace between cars, unexpected cautions, changing strategies and much longer stints. Here it is not enough to be fast, here you need to read the race, anticipate and survive. And yet, he decides to do it on the most demanding circuit of all, the Nordschleife. A route where every mistake is costly, where there are no real escapes and where even specialized drivers make mistakes. This is not a place to adapt little by little, it is a place that forces you to be on the edge from the first moment. And precisely that is why it has generated such an impact within the paddock, because it is not normal for a Formula One driver to enter this environment with this level of exposure. Furthermore, Verstappen is not alone, and that also says a lot about the level of the project. He shares a car with official Mercedes-AMG drivers such as Jules Gounon, Danny Juncadella and Lucas Auer, which immediately raises the internal demands. It is not a team built to learn, it is a team designed to compete. And when you surround yourself with that level, you automatically force yourself to perform from the first moment. However, there is one key detail that many are overlooking. This is not really your first contact with this world. In 2025 he made his debut on the Nordschleife and not only participated, but won in his first 4-hour race in very complicated conditions. That background is what has completely changed the narrative. It is no longer a question of whether you can adapt, but rather how far you can go. And even with all this, the beginning has not been easy. This first day has been marked by a difficult start, by the need to adjust to a completely different environment and by the pressure of meeting extremely high expectations. But that is precisely where Verstappen is surprising everyone. Not because he is dominating without opposition, but because he is demonstrating an ability to adapt that very few drivers in the world have. What we are seeing at the Nürburgring is not pure speed, it is evolution. He is a driver who has already won everything in Formula One, voluntarily facing a scenario where he is once again challenged from scratch. And that completely changes the perspective, because while others defend their position at the top, Verstappen is building something much bigger without many realizing it yet. This is where the story takes a much more interesting turn. Because once the context and magnitude of the challenge is understood, what begins to become clear is that Verstappen is not only participating, he is sending a message. Because if in the previous act we talked about adaptation, now we enter the real battle. Demonstrating that you can compete at the highest level in a completely different environment and do so under real pressure. And not just any pressure, but that of arriving as a 4-time Formula One world champion, with all the spotlights on him and with the expectation of performing from the first minute. This is where many drivers fail, because changing disciplines is not just a matter of talent, it is a matter of mentality. In Formula One, Verstappen is used to controlling the race, dominating the pace, and having clear references. But at the Nürburgring all that disappears. Constant traffic breaks any attempt at a clean lap, Code 60s destroy strategies, and each stint becomes an exercise in survival rather than pure performance. And yet, what he is showing on this first day is something that has caught everyone's attention. His ability to manage chaos. It's not about setting the perfect lap, it's about knowing when to take risks, when to give in, how to move between slower cars without losing time, and above all how to maintain concentration on a circuit where every corner can end your race. But there is something even deeper behind all this, and it is the change of role he is assuming. In Formula One, Verstappen is the absolute reference within his team. Everything revolves around him. Not here. Here you share a car, share decisions, share responsibility. He has to coordinate with other drivers, adapt to different driving styles within the same car, and trust in collective work where not everything depends on him. That detail, although it may seem minor, is key because it completely redefines your way of competing. It is no longer just Max Verstappen against the rest, it is Max Verstappen as part of a much larger team. And that requires a different competitive maturity, one that not all champions manage to develop outside of Formula One. Furthermore, the car also plays its own role in this story. The Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo does not respond like an F1, it does not have the same aerodynamic load, nor the same precision, nor the same aggressiveness in braking. It is a heavier car, more unpredictable in certain phases, which requires a different way of driving. And yet, Verstappen is managing to adapt to those limitations without losing his essence as a driver. And this is where the big question that no one is saying out loud begins to arise. How far can Verstappen really go in this world? Because if he has already shown in 2025 that he can win in his debut, and is now consolidating that adaptation into a much more serious program, then this stops being a curiosity and begins to become a real threat within the resistance. This second act is not about results, it is about signals. Signs that Verstappen is not here to test, he is here to compete. Signs that your ambition has no category limits. And above all, signs that we are seeing the beginning of a transition that could completely change his career in the coming years. Because if he manages to dominate the Nürburgring as he has dominated Formula One, then we would no longer be just talking about a champion, we would be talking about something much bigger, and this is where it all makes sense. Because after seeing the context, the adaptation, and the signs that Verstappen is leaving, we arrive at the most important point of all, what this move really means for his future. Because what is happening at the Nürburgring is not a simple weekend story, it is a warning. A warning that Verstappen is not content with dominating Formula One. While other drivers fight to stay on the grid or to get a victory, he is already building the next step in his career. And he is not doing it when his performance drops. He is doing it in full control at the highest moment of his career. And that completely changes the perspective. Because when a driver like Verstappen decides to leave his comfort zone, face the most difficult circuit in the world, and compete in a completely different discipline, he doesn't do it out of curiosity, he does it because he sees an opportunity. A chance to become more than just a Formula One champion. Because if he manages to consolidate this program at the Nürburgring, if he manages to be constantly competitive in endurance, if he manages to dominate both the sprint and long-duration races, then we would be talking about a driver capable of transcending categories. And here comes the most important thing. This first day, with all its difficulties, with all its complexity, has not been a limit. It has been a starting point. A starting point that makes it clear that Verstappen can adapt, that he can compete, and that he can evolve even when he is already at the top of motorsport. Because the easy thing would be to stay where he is, keep winning, keep accumulating titles, but he has chosen the difficult path. And those types of decisions are what separate the great champions from the legends. Now the real question is not what Verstappen will do at the Nürburgring this weekend. The real question is how far he wants to go with this. Because if this project continues to grow, if he decides to go all in on endurance in the future, then we could be seeing the beginning of a new era in his career, one where the goal is no longer just to win in Formula One, but to conquer everything that is put in front of him. And if that happens, what started as a first day at the Nürburgring could end up being the moment everything changed. And in the end, it all comes down to a single idea. What we have seen from Max Verstappen at the Nürburgring is not a momentary surprise, it is a declaration of ambition. Because he hasn't come to show that he can be fast. We already know that. He has arrived to show that he can evolve, that he can leave his comfort zone and face one of the most demanding environments in motorsports without guarantees, without absolute control, and without margin for error. This first day doesn't define your performance. It defines your mentality. A mentality that is not satisfied with winning in Formula One, that is not limited to a single scenario, and that is constantly looking for new challenges where it can be tested again from scratch. And that is what has really surprised all the pilots. It's not that Verstappen is there, it's how he is there. Competing, adapting, understanding a completely different world, and making it clear that even outside his natural terrain, he is still a driver capable of making a difference. Because while many saw this movement as something secondary, the reality is that it could be the beginning of something much bigger. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.